Night, two officers in Louisville, Kentucky, continue to recover from gunshot wounds as the nation braces itself for another round of protests and riots this evening that are sure to come. A violent Black Lives Matter rioter pulled the trigger last night, firing on officers for no reason other than sheer hatred of cops and, of course, the rule of law that they protect. The only reason we are in the position we find ourselves in now with these riots and protests going on across the country is because of pure ignorance, blindness, and an inability to even reason. When Democrat leaders stoke those flames with claims of racism, all hell breaks loose as members of the mob now appear to have no ability to even think for themselves.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! And we don't get it! Burn it down! We don't get it! Burn it down! We don't get it! Shut it down!
Burn it down. Shut it down, they chant. All of this, of course, stems from the officer-involved shooting death of Breonna Taylor and the grand jury decision not to file any charges against the officers related to her death. There is no doubt she was a beautiful young woman with the potential for a bright future. But what no one will acknowledge about Taylor is that she made some awful choices along the way, choices any parent would be mortified over. She chose an accused drug dealer as her boyfriend, and at the time, police believed she was even allowing drugs to be pushed in and out of her home for that boyfriend, hence the search warrant. The bottom line here is the crowd you choose to hang around will have a direct effect on your future. That is a lesson that I talk about with my son every single day. A tragedy like her death rarely is due to simply just one event. The shootout, even her death, could have been prevented long before those officers showed up. If she didn't date the accused drug dealer, she's alive. If she doesn't accept packages at her house in that man's name, she could be alive. A court most likely would have never issued the warrant that allowed police to raid her home. And then, of course, her decision to stand next to a different man who was fully willing to fire his gun at officers. Take any one of those facts out of the equation, Breonna Taylor is alive today, but all that is ignored. Well, they want a war. The mob, as you can see, has clearly short-circuited. The idiocy and violence was on full display across the country as BLM chaos creators refused to acknowledge the fact that cops had a right to enter her home. Knock or no knock, it doesn't matter. And they have a clear, undeniable right to defend themselves in the face of danger. Once Taylor's new boyfriend, not the one accused of dealing drugs, shot and hit one of the officers, their only choice was to return fire. Former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGeneva summed up who is ultimately at fault for Taylor's death on this program last night.
He, the boyfriend, is responsible for her death. If he had simply put his weapon on the floor and allowed them to do their job, she would be alive today.
Show your hands, obey commands. It will always keep you alive in the face of anything with police officers. That didn't happen. What reasonable person in America would think officers should not return fire after they're being fired at? In fact, I believe they have a duty to return fire, if only for the sole reason to return home to their families alive. What angers me even more is that police bowed to the mob and dropped all charges against Kenneth Walker, the man in that home that shot that officer. In fact, Walker has now flipped the script. He's now suing the police. So after police say he refused to open the door and comply with officers' commands, fires his weapon, hitting one officer, his girlfriend is killed in the hail of return gunfire, he sues the cops, and the police drop all charges against him. Not to mention, they paid Breonna Taylor's family $12 million in a wrongful death settlement. Money I don't think the taxpayers of Louisville should have ever had to pay, as sad as her death is.